who could come. We have Toby in the back. We have Nick behind the camera serving. We have a few other people who couldn't be here today, but wow, what a week. God is so good. He did such amazing things, and I just want to thank, the team for stepping out and saying yes to the Lord and being obedient to the call that He placed on their life. What a powerful week watching them step out and do all that the Lord has called them to do. It was so special. If you want to talk about the trip, if you have any questions, if you want to hear stories, find anyone with one of our Redeem shirts on, and we would love to tell you about it. We can't stop talking about it. So we're going to play a little recap video for you. Is this on? Okay. As you can see, we got to do a lot of special things this past week. We got to visit some communities and put on a Sidewalk Sunday School presentation for them. We got to do home visits in different communities. We got to spend a lot of time with the kids at the Life Center. And we got to do some serve projects where you saw, their construction skills and all that. So I just have a few questions for everybody here. I realized for service I didn't introduce you guys. So we have Steve, Jaziri, Julia, and Ben here today with us. This obviously isn't our whole team, but we just have a few that are going to share with us today. So I have a few questions for you in regards to the trip. When you first heard about the trip, was it something that you knew immediately that you wanted to do? Was it something that you had to marinate on, or maybe someone had to nudge you? What were your immediate responses to the trip?
Do our answers have to match the exact service from last year? All right, because that's going to be impossible. But I do want to bring to attention the amazing job that you did. Leading the team, I want to say that again. I want to make it clear. You hit it out of the park. You were awesome. And this kid is so funny. If you don't know her, get to know her. She'll make you laugh. But anyone else want to go first?
No, I was definitely going to say at first I wasn't going to go. I didn't want to go, but people started just asking me more, kind of pressuring me towards, and I was like, fine, I'll go. But I was definitely nervous to go. I wasn't really accustomed to what a missions trip would be, and I thought we'd be in pitch tents, and we're going to be eating awful food, and we're going to get sick, and I was really nervous about kind of those outside factors at first, but I was really glad I went, and I thought you did a really good job leading the trip.
We did get sick, though, Ben.
So when I had first heard about the trip, I had just gotten back from college, so I guess I was kind of in this rut of, I got to take advantage of every single opportunity that comes my way, but I was so excited about the trip. I had studied Spanish for about 8 years, so I was so excited to use some of what I have learned with the kids. But I had gone through some struggles right after I had said yes, and I know some of you know that I'm trying to apply to medical school, so that was really rough process, and super depressed, super anxious, and God said wait, and I went into the trip really scared, and really just not filled. The tank was empty, essentially, so I had a hard time getting on that flight.
For me personally, when I first heard about the trip and they had announced it at service, I was ecstatic. I remember my mom looked to the side of me and she just kind of smirked because she already knew what my answer was going to be. I remember being a little girl and always wanting to travel to a third world country to see their culture and their livelihood, just to kind of see another side of things. We are so blessed at home that sometimes it takes seeing another side of somebody else's culture or livelihood to kind of put things into perspective, and to say the least, it did that for me.
At first, I was really excited. I remember when Madison was talking about it, I looked over at my parents and they were like, yeah, you're gonna go. But then, as the days got closer, I was like, oh yeah, it's actually happening. And I was a little nervous, but then obviously we came and we had such a week. It was so amazing and powerful. And I'm glad that I got to experience it with each and every one of you.
Yeah, for me, I immediately felt the tug, to go. I said yes in my heart immediately, but, and then Pastor Ken challenges us, hey, you go give him $100, and put your deposit down. I did it, and then I'm like, oh man, I'm locked in now. You all right? So, yeah, did that, and then you're excited. I was excited at first, but then the doubt starts creeping in. How are you going to be used? What can you do? How can you witness to these people? You're going to come off your high horse and preach to people in a third world. All those doubts started creeping in, and as the trip approached, I was trying to think of ways to back out. How maybe I can just give my money to someone else. Maybe it's just not for me. And I'm so glad I went, because when you say yes and you follow your heart and God uses you, it's life-changing. So, yeah, it was very great.
A lot of us had shared that we were amongst each other in our team debriefs and whatnot, that we were nervous that we couldn't be used, or who am I? What makes me so special that God would want me here? But God just wants your yes. The special thing is that we're not special, and we're all called to spread the gospel and to make disciples and to bring God to everyone. So God honors your yes, whether it's in Honduras or at home in your workplace, because mission starts at home. And I thank you all for saying yes and doing it even though you were scared. We did a lot. You know, what you saw in that video was just 2 days of what we got to do. So we did a lot. It was like a month packed into a week, you know? And we did a lot of different kind of serving. What was your favorite aspect of serving? What part were you like, I could do this all day? Like, what was the best part for you guys?
I didn't say this last time, but I think my favorite part was serving with my father. That was actually it was actually so special. You know, I've never really, I mean, here we've gotten to do that, but just, you know, to do it in another country, but also just the two of us, it was really special. But the kids, those kids are just so incredibly special. They really are. There was this one girl who just holds my entire heart. 4 years old and just has so much grace and love to give. And those kids just really poured into you. They really just loved on you. I went in empty and those kids filled me up so that I could just overflow, really. That was definitely my favorite part of the trip, but everything was so special.
I would definitely say the house visits were my favorite part. I enjoyed serving as part of the serve projects and working. It was definitely good for our team to be united. And even with the kids, it was awesome, such a fun time. I wouldn't say I could do the house visits every day. That's like saying The Passion of the Christ is your comfort movie. But but it was definitely a real experience and a raw experience. And you got to see a glimpse into someone else's reality. And it was really powerful to be with those people and kind of hear their stories as well, because it filled you. And I remember at the first house we visited on the Friday, when we started praying for the guy, he started praying for us. And it was like, whoa, like we see your conditions, where you're living, and all the struggles he was going through. He was sharing a little bit about his mom and how she was sick. And it was really powerful to see how someone's hurting and they still pivot and pour into you. And they're hurting, but they're still praying for you. And it was like such a beautiful lesson to see right there, and just how filled he was, even though he had so little in that moment. And I think that was the best part, was the house visits and seeing their lives.
My favorite part was, it's so hard to choose, but it was like before we went to Sidewalk Sunday and we got to spend time with the kids and like playing with them and watching like them, like their passions grow through like whether it's soccer or playing with the bubbles or even painting their nails. But it was so hard leaving, because I remember like the last Sunday service, there was like these little girls and we were all playing tag and everybody was running away. And then I remember they were like, oh, you're coming back next week, right? And I was like, no, not really. It was very hard to say no. But yeah, and obviously the home visits and watching them pray over us despite them having so little and we having so much. Like when you mentioned the first house on Friday where the guy with the glasses, and he had nothing. And he had his family, of course, but again, he was losing his vision. And he was praying over us, and the lady for you, the third house, where after it was all wrapped up, she started praying over you, and it was very powerful to watch all that happen together.
Yeah, kind of bouncing off of Jazzy, it is very hard to pick just one thing, because I feel that every activity we did kind of served a different purpose. For me personally, what impacted me the most spiritually was definitely the home visits as well. Seeing the conditions that these families are going through and the hardships that they're challenging, it's very eye-opening, and it kind of creates a different perspective on life overall. I know since I've been home, I look at things differently, and my whole perspective has kind of shifted a little bit. And it kind of sucks that I had to go through that and experience this type of thing for me to see the other side of things. But sometimes that's what it takes, and it was really just eye-opening. And also, I feel like it was really cool to see the Word of God be shared with these families. And even though we do not speak the same language as them, there wasn't ever a struggle communicating with that, because as we know, the Bible is a universal language. You can take it anywhere and serve it to anybody, and they're going to be touched in some way or another. And it was really powerful to see these families be touched, you know. I don't know if Madison wanted to bring this up, but there was a man who wasn't part of our group during the home visits, and he was hanging around because he was asking for money for alcohol. And Madison had kind of just told us, like, hey, guys, like, he's not with us, you know, kind of just don't pay him any mind, you know. And at the last house on Monday, one of the team members, who is a pastor, an older gentleman who can't be here today, unfortunately, he decided to pray over this man. And with the help of Jazzy and her translating, we were able to give him something greater than money or booze could ever do for him. We gave him a peace in his heart. And when we saw him days later, it was like a changed man. You know, he had a smile from ear to ear, and his spirit was just lifted in a way that we did not see him when we first encountered him. So the power of prayer really spoke to me on this trip, and how much it can move people.
I was just going to say about that man, too, that we saw. I feel like God had to kind of correct me in that moment, and maybe some of us, too, because we brushed him off for a majority of that home visit. And then when Pastor Rick went to pray for him, that was like a very Christ-like thing to do. And I feel like we were kind of the disciples when we brush off the kids and like, yo, get out of here. And then Jesus is looking at us like, what are you doing? Like, I came here to save the lost. And we kind of just ignored him and put to the side. And God was kind of correcting me in that moment. Like, why would you look past this man's struggles, especially when a lot of us have our own struggles too? And imagine if God looked at us that same way, like how we were with that man who was really going through it. And I'm so glad that Pastor Rick stepped up and was able to pray for him. But it was a very humbling moment for me, I'd say.
I can agree with that too. Like, I remember I was like beating myself up because I was like, I told everybody to pay him no mind, you know, like, and he's just as lost as the rest of us, you know, like like they said, we all have our own struggles, and like we don't all have our struggles out where everybody can see them. Like, we're not all drunks staggering on the street begging for money to get more, you know, like, so I loved the way Rick stepped out in faith and prayed for that man. Like, he immediately just melted. Like, he sobbed, he thanked Rick, he was like, thank you so much for praying for me, and then he just wanted to follow us just to hear whatever else we had to say. He wanted to hear the word of God. He wanted to hear more prayers. He wanted to see the way God was moving, and it was so special. It was a needed spiritual slap in the face for some of us.
Is it my turn? Yeah. All right. I want to beat Ben to this. I was the second oldest guy on the trip, not the oldest. And I did get to celebrate my 50th birthday there, so that was big. I will never forget that. The most impactful thing for me was definitely the home visits, though. And in particular, the one where the glasses. Do we have that picture of that man?
Can we get Steve's picture up?
Yeah, it's up. So that man right there reading his Bible, we went to visit his home, and, you know, we're sharing the gospel with him, and he was so excited to be there, and he runs inside, and he's telling us his life story and his struggles, and he runs in the house, comes out with his Bible, and wants to share with us. And he couldn't get through a couple of words without stumbling. He couldn't see, and he explained to us that he was losing his vision. And I reached in my backpack for a pair of reading glasses, which I wasn't going to pack on the trip, and I wasn't going to bring them out that day because I hadn't been using them, but I brought them, and we handed it to him, and it was like a little miracle. And he put them on, and the man could just read fluently and beautifully, and he blessed us tremendously with what he was saying. And I get choked up thinking about it because it was just unreal what happened, and it was just so beautiful. And he shared with us, prayed for us. We're supposed to be there blessing them, and he turned it around and blessed us like beyond what I ever expected. It was amazing. It was amazing. So that was it for me right there.
That was a special moment for all of us that night. I remember we all couldn't stop talking about it, like what God did. And to see like the change in his demeanor completely, like when he first started reading, he was like embarrassed. He was like, I'm sorry, I can't read well, like my eyesight's going. And then as soon as he put those glasses on and he started reading, he had like a new confidence. And he said to us, he was like, I've been so scared to share my faith because I haven't been able to read. And I haven't been able to, like dive into the word and be able to share. He's like, now I can tell people about the Lord. And he was so happy. And by you bringing, something that we could get at the dollar store, like a pair of readers, changed his future.
Something so insignificant.
Right.
There were a lot of divine, appointments that happened on this trip. And the first one, and it was, we knew it was going to be a special trip when we saw Jesus walking on the clouds on the flight. That was incredible. I don't know if you guys have seen that pic. I know it went viral in the church thanks to my wife. But, yeah, it was pretty amazing. Yeah, it was a great time.
So good. God is so good, and we got to see him move in so many ways. Obviously, if we told you them all, we'd probably be here till midnight. So I have 2 more questions for you. What was the most challenging, spiritually, mentally, physically? We went through a lot, We all got a little sick. We all, were spiritually checked and humbled. What was probably the most challenging part of the trip for you?
Oh, I go first again? All right. For me, definitely, after saying yes and realizing, whoa, I have nothing to offer these people. I'm empty. I think, accepting your offer to, do a devotional at someone's house, that was scared the poop out of me. I almost said the S word again. So, it just really frightened me, and I just didn't think I had anything in me to offer, And so, I'm trying to come up with a word, and the challenging thing was just letting go of that fear and letting God put the words in your mouth. And it seemed like I'm so proud of the younger, everyone's younger than me essentially, but I'm so proud of the kids and how they stepped out, and they were able to they were like little preachers, man. It was awesome. And when I saw that, I was supposed to share on the first day, and I chickened out. I backed out. I'm not doing this, I was coming up with excuses. But on the final day, I did. And it was because of them and because I was able to see that God used them. I can be used too. So that was the biggest challenge for me.
So good. I remember Steve was giving me a hard time before we left. He was like, I can't dance, for sidewalk. I'm not doing that. I can't. He's like, I don't know if this is for me. Can I just stay and do construction all day? Can I just do that? And I was like, no, Steve, we're all going to do everything because that's what we're going to do. And he was killing it in those dances. And he gave it his all. He might be, not have rhythm, and that's okay. But he did it, and he did it with a smile on his face. And watching Steve, melt all week was such a blessing to see, you step past that fear and be an awesome example was amazing. So thank you.
I can kind of bounce off of that. I had degraded myself before this trip, and, I just was like, I'm so incompetent. I'm not good enough. I've not, like you said, I had nothing to offer. I had just beaten myself down so bad. And so even just speaking out in general was a struggle for me. Even here, before the trip, during the trip, praying for people, even just speaking within the group, there was a barrier, a wall up. I think it really stemmed from fear, but I felt so not good enough. And especially because you see what these people are going through, and you're like, what do I say? I know what's on the other side of things. Maybe they don't. Maybe this is all they know. But even so, it's just, what do you say? I guess the overarching theme is that God has really, really just put the words in our mouth, seriously. Even behind closed doors, even when we were kind of just talking in our debriefs, that was definitely the biggest challenge for me, and just waiting on the Lord and trusting in Him throughout the whole trip. That was hard, just in general, because I tend to be the type of person who wants to just take control of everything and just put my head down and go. But when God said wait, I had no other choice but to wait and just to trust him. And so that was a struggle that I had to overcome in the trip, and now I have a completely different perspective on. So
I think we all shared similar struggles in that we all felt very unqualified. I know I did. The day before I was doing my devotional, I was like praying and reading. I was like, I have nothing to offer these people. Like, I'm this white American kid who has everything, and I'm going to start telling them, oh, God has your best interest in mind. And I didn't want to give like some cliche message, but it really is true that God gives you the words to speak. And it was really nice to see all the young people on the trip who we got to hear bits and pieces of everybody's. Sorry, Steve. We got to hear bits and pieces of everybody's story, and how, you know, we all have our flaws and our insecurities, but it's cool to see how God uses the unfinished product, and he honors your yes and your obedience. And I think Peter said in the debrief that your procrastination is delaying someone's breakthrough. So to be able to be confident enough and allow God to kind of take control when we were speaking to the people really made a difference. And we saw so many testimonies and stories and breakthroughs of people in those moments. And we were just speaking, you know, just stepping up and doing what God called us to do. So I think that was one of the most powerful parts. But I was definitely scared and nervous at first to speak.
And like, he said that they were scared. A lot of them were scared to step up. Like, I got like pretty sick the last day during home visits. Me and Timmy. So we ended up going back to the bus and not being able to finish home visits because we weren't doing so hot. And Ben stepped up immediately and you know, kind of took over for me, and like everybody else stepped up when, you know, like, you know, leader got sick, and Timmy was supposed to be playing guitar, and Ben took over and was playing guitar, and everybody stepped up even though that they were scared or they were uncomfortable and they were out of their comfort zone. And that was one of my favorite parts, was watching you all grow and watching you all take that step of faith and knowing it might not be perfect, but this is what I have. And that was amazing.
For me, it was like I was nervous about sharing my faith and spreading the gospel because like I graduated high school a while ago, and when I was in high school, I would like not share about the gospel because I was always around like certain communities that were like get offended, and I was nervous about like, oh, what if I say this, and then they try to cancel me or whatever, right? And so I was very nervous about that, but then the trip happened, and now I feel like I can share it to the whole world, no matter what.
So good. I wish we had like before and afters of everybody, because like I wish you could see like the change in demeanor and like everyone that's on the stage. It was so good. Every night we ended our day with like a debrief. We would talk about what the Lord did that day and what, you know, he taught us and things like that. So I started the week with a question. I said, what was God speaking to you before the trip that he was going to work on you in this trip? And at the end of the week I asked, what did he do to bring that to fruition, and how are you going to take it home? So using the last two questions from our nightly podcast that we did every night, what was God working in you? What did he, you know, what chains did he break? What did he deliver you from? What new outlook do you have?
For me personally, I feel that God was trying to reveal himself to me throughout this week and restore my confidence in my faith. I felt like a lot of people on this trip were much more in touch with their faith than I am, as I am a newer Christian. And I wasn't really confident in praying out loud or praying over people, especially knowing that they don't even speak the same language as us. So when I had my house where I had my devotional, I was trying to pick a verse from the Bible that I felt really spoke to that, but I didn't know, you know, which family we were going to go, what hardships they were going to go through, or anything like that. And just as we all had mentioned, God really put the words right on your heart and right through your mouth, and he spoke for you. And it ended up being, you know, a perfect verse for that family and the hardships that they were going through. As I mentioned before, because we are so blessed on this side of things, to see more blessings come from that, it is nothing compared to seeing God move mountains out there, because they have the harder part of things, and to see him work through these families and make miracles happen and move mountains and also restore the innocence and the lives of these children who were once in a very hardship and were not in a good place. To see the joy in their heart and they're so full of love. They want that one-on-one connection. They want the attention. They just want the full-on love. And to see that be restored through the power of God has been truly powerful. And prayer really spoke to me throughout this whole trip. I feel that I took the Bible for granted before, and I didn't open it as much as I should have, and I didn't have that one-on-one time with God every day. And after seeing how in touch with their faith these families are, considering the circumstances of their livelihood, it puts everything into perspective.
I would definitely say I had a lot of selfish intentions before the trip. I was kind of asking God, like, oh, where are you going to use me, and what should I do? And I feel like he kind of pulled me back and put me behind the scenes, and he showed me that the gospel is a lot bigger than myself. It's a lot bigger than this church. It was really cool to see even the pastors in those communities and how they operated, and that their job was bigger than Sunday. They were in their community every day, spreading the gospel, giving food to people in need. And it's cool to see those little bits and pieces and how this is a global mission, and it's not just about yourself. There's a bunch of people playing a significant role, and how important the community is, and their strength in numbers. It was so cool to see how our team was able to help, and that's just a small portion of the gospel. And so I think that kind of global mindset, that this is a lot bigger than us, and that it takes a lot of people to kind of do these things. I think that was the biggest lesson I learned, is that this mission is a lot bigger than me. It's a lot bigger than our church. It's for everybody.
For me, I was trying to work on boldness because, like I said earlier, I was scared of sharing the gospel and my faith. And I feel like God really took that seriously, because there were points where either I had to help translate, or I would be at reception trying to get certain things at our hotel fixed. Or, for example, for that man that was following us at home visits, where he was asking for either money or booze, and we ended up praying over him. And there was this one specific moment with him where Pastor Rick, who isn't here fortunately, but he wanted to preach over him. And I remember in debrief we were talking about how, like, certain people have certain gifts and that they could preach over others, while some others can do it with others. And I mentioned the point where it's stronger if two people with two different talents do it, because he has the talent of being able to preach, but he can't speak Spanish, and I can't preach, but I can speak Spanish. So we kind of joined forces, and he started like praying over the guy, and I would translate. And seeing that guy go into tears was very powerful and humbling for me.
And I don't know if any of you have ever been able to get acquainted with Jessie Ray before today, but she's very quiet, you know, very timid. And I was like, girlfriend, you're going to be our quarterback because you're the only one that can speak fluent Spanish on this trip. So we need you. Like, you are very needed. So she was, you know, leading for Sidewalk Sunday School. And I was like, hey, like, you know, we're working with kids. So you got to be as over the top and as, you know, silly. If you feel stupid, you're doing it right. Like, that's how you work with kids. So when you're narrating, like, you know, I told her, I was like, tap into your inner Dora. You know, you got to just be, like, over.
Yeah, I definitely did.
And she did. Like, she did so good. Like, seeing her step out, she's translating at home visits. She was talking, she's like, come on, kids, repeat after me. And doing amazing. Like this is her job. Like, she's done it for years. Watching everybody step out was so special, but like especially you, Jazzy, because I know how hard it was for you. And she was like, I'm so grateful for this new boldness that God's given me, which was such an amazing testimony.
I think for me, God was really trying to deliver me from my pride. Before the trip, you know, everyone was telling me, you know, Julia, you got this. You know, you've wanted to be a doctor since you were 8 years old. Like, you've got all your ducks in a row. You've got this. You have everything, you know, put together. You have everything, you know. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I got it. And so when God said wait, I was like, what do you mean? why me? Why do I have to struggle? You know, I felt like this was the purpose I had in my heart, and you know, why me? You know, and I went into that with that attitude and came out with like, wow, why am I saying this? Who am I to even think that I am deserving of all those things that I already have? You know, if the cards were dealt differently, I could be in these people's shoes, you know, and I should just be grateful for the opportunity to pursue what I want to pursue. I was just so humbled, and, you know, going on this trip, I was like, what more am I going to gain from this, you know? But wow, I mean, the second I sat on the bus and we encountered, you know, the guy who kind of runs everything, his name is Melvin, he said to us, it's hard to save a life, but it's even harder to help restore one. And I was struggling with my application, and that was kind of like the missing puzzle piece that I needed to write about, because, you know, there's so much more than just diagnosing someone, you know. There's so much more about someone's story that you need to learn about them, and I think that that's what's missing too, and sometimes in our healthcare. And I was really, really struggling with telling my story, because that's a lot about who you are as an applicant, and really putting that down on paper. And how do I describe my faith in a world that, you know, persecutes Christians? You know, is my opportunity going to be taken away from me if I tell who I am? And the service was literally about legacy and, you know, telling your story. And I was like, God, this was literally for me. Just how much more fitting could this be, really? But it was just such a humbling experience, really. Makes me want to cry, because it's like we have so much to be thankful for. So much. There was this one woman, Jeanette, with the third house that we visited on the first day. And she was just grateful for getting up in the morning. She says, God, I haven't been able to walk in weeks. I'm thankful that God has me alive for another day to take care of my children. You know, and she's praying not even for herself, but for her kids. And she has 1 week left of medication. And she's content in her waiting. And I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? It was just such a humbling experience. What a slap in the face, really.
And to touch on like how powerful that woman Jeanette's faith was, like she needed 3 more weeks of medication, but she only had enough money for 1. And there was a sickness going around called dengue fever that like a lot of the families were affected by, but her house was hit really bad. And she said her only prayer was that she could wake up so that way she could care for her children, because they still needed a mom, because she lost her mom when she was young, and she didn't want her kids to have to go through that. And to see her faith and being like, I know that God's here and I know that he's taking care of me. As soon as we said we wanted to pray for her, she just broke down and she was just ready to receive that prayer, because it was astounding. Like Julia said, like, you know, our struggles are nothing compared to theirs. And we're like, Lord, why me, you know? But to see this woman standing so firm in her faith and so grateful for a bag of food and prayer was so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about a moment like right before we went on the trip where my family, we were the 4 of us in the car, and everyone's bickering, and we're all complaining, about luxuries, like it's like stupid stuff, you know? And I remember saying, we need to go on this trip, like today, like now. But I wasn't aware of how much it would impact us, really. I didn't. I just knew it would be eye-opening. But it makes me think of Philippians 4:11, like contentness. And it's a skill. It's something that we have to learn. We have to practice. And you can't have contentness. You can't be content if you're not grateful, if you don't have gratitude. And you can't fully have gratitude if you don't have proper perspective. And to go out there and get outside your bubble and outside your comfort zone, you see how these people struggle and the things that we take for granted, the luxuries that we take for granted, the things that we complain about. These people live on dirt. Their houses, their walls are branches tied together, stuck in the ground with string for hinges, you know? on their doors, and it's like, and they seem to have more joy than us. Like, you don't get enough likes on your Instagram, and you want to, jump off a bridge. These people are just happy to be alive so that they can take care of their children, and they were so grateful for that bag of food that we're giving them. It's like one day, like a week's worth of food. It's like, come on, man. It's like, we're just so grateful. I'm so grateful. And I think this trip for me, and I hope for everyone, was just life-changing. I don't think this was just another mountaintop experience. I think it was life-changing. So I hope everyone gets a chance to go. So
I also hope everyone gets a chance to go. For me, it was a little different. This was my 6th mission trip, and this was my 4th time in that area of Honduras. So I remember last summer, I was speaking to a pastor, and during home visits, he was really taking a back burner. He was just sitting in the back. And I was like, just giving him a hard time. I was like, you gonna go get in there? You gonna go lead your church? And he was like, I've done this before. I'm excited to see what God's doing in them. And I was like, oh, like that's good. And so that was my mindset kind of going into this week. Like, I've had the incredible opportunity to do this, for a 6th time. And I'm like, Lord, I'm so excited to see what you do in this group. And to see what God did in each and every one of them. Like you, Julia, I was stoked when I saw your name because I didn't really know her. And I was like, yes, like new person. Like I knew you were newer to your faith. And to see how courageous you were to step out, like she was one of the only ones to try to speak Spanish at the home visits, to like try to connect with them on that level. And like, yeah, we don't do it perfectly, you're not fluent, and that's fine, but the fact that you tried, really touches someone, like that you're trying, and to see you step out and to see like, Julia be so honest about where she was, and Ben, he's like a wise old man in a 19-year-old body, like it's crazy, like I want to be like him when I grow up, and like Jazzy just being so bold, and Steve being fearless, and becoming this, this big teddy bear throughout the week, which he won't admit it, but he is. It was just so incredible, and to see just how God has transformed your hearts through the week, and to see this new fire that's ignited, and I hope it spreads to every single one of you here. God is so, so good and so faithful, and he just wants your yes, and he doesn't have to call you to another nation. Like, mission starts at home. We all have a workplace, we all have a friend group, we all have a family, we all have people in our lives who do not know the Lord the way that we do. And it's our responsibility as believers to reach them, to love on them. Our theme of the week, what I kept telling them was, yeah, you don't speak Spanish, that's okay, but you do know how to love the way Christ loves you. That's all you can do. If you're loving on people and you're saying yes to the Lord and being obedient, like God's gonna honor that. Let him honor that. Say yes to him. We're gonna do more missions. This is just the beginning for our church, which I am so excited about because I know that this is the calling that the Lord has on my life and for our church. If you want to put the QR code up, don't worry, this isn't a commitment. You're not gonna be going on a trip if you scan this code. But if you want to know more, if you want more information about what's coming up next year, ways to help, ways to sign up, just more information, scan this QR code, and you'll be the first to find out about our next trip, of what we're doing, different things. Does anyone have any last words to share before we pray out?
I do want to remember Kylie, who's in the hospital right now.
Yeah,
with,
she's really sick.
Really sick, 104 fever, so if you
Yeah,
want
we'll
to
be praying
include
for
her
her.
in a
And
prayer.
oh my gosh, talk about, I was so proud of her this week. Kylie's one of our younger new high school graduates, and she's really sick. But poor thing, she ended up hurting her back while we were there, and she was having like the most severe back spasm I've ever seen for 2 days straight. She couldn't stop like moving, and not a single complaint out of that girl. Like she was still like, whatever, God's still gonna use me. And she still served, to her heart's content. They were all rock stars, like every single person on this team. There wasn't one person that I was like, oh, I wish they did more. Like everyone gave it their all. They came in with that servant's heart and that spirit of unity. And it was so, so incredible. I'm so humbled and honored to have been able to kind of facilitate this trip and have spent it all with you. And we want to spread that to you. Like, yeah, we have our inside jokes and we have our Honduras 2024 podcast. Like, but we want you guys to be a part of that. So talk to us about it because we're not going to stop talking about it. I'm sorry. And, come with us next year.